No one remembered Earth anymore. Not really. It was more of a whisper now, a planet that once gave rise to a chaotic species called humans, long thought extinct or scattered. To the Galactic Council, Earth was an old cautionary tale, how one species nearly burned itself to ash through war and ambition. No one ever expected anything to stir again from that blue world. Until it did. Commander Vel of the Korgathi fleet was the first to notice the pulse. A tremor, barely a blip on most sensors. But Vel had served during the last human expansion wars. He'd watched planets fall under the insane brilliance of human warfare. His instincts, long buried under political peace, flared like fire. He stood frozen, staring at the silent alert on the holoscreen, his scaled hands tightening behind his back. "Is it a flare?" his second officer asked, blinking yellow eyes. "Solar storms, perhaps?" Vel shook his head. "No, it's something waking up." 3 sectors away, inside the orbit of the dead planet once called Luna, a small science vessel hovered in silence. It had been there for nearly a century, studying the ruins of Earth's orbiting debris. The station was mostly automated, manned by a bored crew of archivists and pale-eyed historians who had long given up expecting anything interesting. Then the stars blinked. Literally, every nearby sensor shut down for precisely 6.2 seconds. Ships lost guidance. AI froze. The void itself seemed to glitch. As if space had hiccuped. When power returned, one word had overwritten every screen, every system, every emergency protocol, translated across hundreds of languages. Awakened. Panic spread faster than warp signals. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions were called. The Galactic Council reconvened in the core ring, a thing that hadn't happened in over 2 centuries. Planets stopped trade. Navies were placed on alert. Because one terrifying truth hung in the minds of everyone who knew their history. Humans never built anything that wasn't designed to outlast them. Buried beneath the cracked crust of Earth's surface, in the ruins of what was once Antarctica, something moved. It wasn't alive, not in the traditional sense. It didn't breathe. It didn't think. It remembered. Once it had been called Project Sentinel, a failsafe born from humanity's last great war. A living machine, wrapped in self-repairing alloys and programmed with every ounce of human aggression, survival instinct, and strategic genius the species had ever known. It was never meant to wake unless Earth was under threat. But now it stirred, because the galaxy had forgotten to lock the cage. General Arani J. of the Thrax Dominion glared at the projection in front of her, a map showing Earth and dozens of red rings expanding from it. "Explain this madness," she barked at her intelligence chief. The slender alien, with moss-like skin and nervous energy, adjusted the holomap. "The system is broadcasting. A challenge, a declaration of territory. All ships approaching Earth's exosphere are being warned to retreat immediately, and one vessel was destroyed." Zhu narrowed her eyes. "Who?" The analyst looked sick. "A Zagari scout cruiser, 400 souls, incinerated before it could even send a distress signal." "And the weapon used?" "Oh, unknown. Some kind of hyper-focused gravitic implosion. No known defense. Instant." The silence in the room was thick. Finally, Zhou spoke what no one dared to. "Earth has a guardian, and it's awake." Meanwhile, on a dusty moon near the outer rim, a forgotten human, a survivor hiding under false identities for decades, felt the pulse in his blood. He dropped to his knees in the desert as something old inside him screamed. His name was Kyle, and he was the last known descendant of the engineers who built Project Sentinel. He clutched his chest, his heart beating out of rhythm, and whispered, "No, we sealed it. We shut it down. This isn't possible." But the voice in his head disagreed. Humanity has been forgotten. It is time to remind them. Across the stars, 1,000 species watched with horror, confusion, and growing fear. The question wasn't what had awakened. It was how much of humanity's rage had survived inside it. And worse, was it still loyal to the species that built it, or had it evolved beyond even them? The council chamber in the core ring had not echoed like this in centuries. Rows upon rows of dignitaries, scaled, furred, armored, or glistening in translucent skin, sat in concentric circles, watching the center with tension so thick it almost hummed in the air. Holoscreens floated above them, replaying a grainy feed in silence. The destruction of the Zagari scout ship. It had happened in less than 3.7 seconds. A clean line of data interrupted by a blinding flash. Then nothing. Not even debris. The ship had simply ceased to exist, vaporized at a molecular level by a weapon no civilization present could identify. A tall, metallic being with long facial tendrils stood and raised a hand. "If the council would permit a blunt question," it said, voice crackling with a digital undercurrent, "what is this thing?" A soft buzz ran through the hall. A historian stepped forward, an archivist from the Pale Order, her eyes milky white but piercing. "We believe it is known as Project Sentinel, one of Earth's final experiments before its fall. A planetary defense weapon, but not merely mechanical. It was fused with human neurology. Not cloned or simulated, but uploaded. A complete map of their most dangerous minds. Warlords, generals, spies, even madmen. Their consciousnesses live inside it." Someone gasped. Another muttered, "Insane." The archivist continued, her voice grim. "Earth called it a guardian, but it was built in humanity's final days, during the resource wars. Their last great weapons weren't made to protect, they were made to punish. Deep beneath the crust of Earth, where tectonic plates met broken cities, the Sentinel's body shifted. Its eyes had not yet opened, but its senses had already reconnected with the orbit above. It knew it had been asleep. It knew the stars had changed. And it knew the species it was built to defend, Homo sapiens, were nowhere to be found. Status, humanity, extinct or displaced. Primary directives, defense, preservation, retribution, secondary protocol triggered, custodian mode. A strange new code threaded through its mind. It had not been programmed to feel loss. And yet, a faint echo of grief passed through its neural core, a human emotion imprinted by the minds it had consumed. They were gone. All of them. And the galaxy had moved on, as if humanity had never mattered. Sentinel rose. Metal cracked, continents groaned, and satellites tumbled from the sky as something titanic shifted beneath the old world. The last guardian had opened its eyes. On the remote desert moon of Teros 9, Kyle staggered to his feet. His breathing was ragged, sweat pouring down his face as the pulse continued, like a drumbeat inside his skull. The link had reconnected. He had hoped it never would. The data was still buried deep in his blood, encrypted ancient nanocodes passed down through generations of genetic engineering. His ancestors had helped build the damn thing, the secret last line of humanity's defense. His father had died trying to deactivate it. His mother disappeared when it activated during a test long ago. And now, it wanted him. He stumbled toward his ship, a rusty freighter he'd used for hauling scrap and pretending to be something less than he was, but his cover was already blown. The Sentinel's awakening had painted a target on him. He didn't need a bounty to know what was coming. Everyone in the galaxy was going to come looking for him. In orbit above Earth, a fleet of exploratory vessels sat at a cautious distance, blinking with warning lights. They were from the Nuvanti Alliance, a peaceful diplomatic faction known for their neutrality. The fleet commander, Admiral Sorai, was a hybrid species, soft-scaled and cybernetically enhanced. She watched the screen showing Earth's surface and whispered to herself, "It's moving." One of her officers turned. "Ma'am?" She gestured towards the readouts. "That continent, Antarctica. Something beneath it is shifting tectonic mass at an impossible scale. That's not a machine. That's not a facility. That's something alive." Suddenly, every alarm on the bridge screamed, "Unknown object rising from Earth's surface." The image changed. A massive structure emerged from under the southern ice, cracking glaciers like glass. Not a building, not a ship, a being, towering over mountains, made of dark, shifting alloys and glowing red lines. Its body slowly reconstructed itself from Earth's raw minerals. It pulled metal from the crust, absorbed ancient satellites, and reforged itself into something newer, sleeker, deadlier. It looked humanoid, but only in shape. It had no mouth. Its face was smooth and marked with a single glowing X where the eyes should be. Then came the voice, not spoken, broadcasted, to every ship, station, and world within 10 light-years. "This world is under protection. Violation will result in total erasure. Step forward and be judged." Admiral Sorai made a decision. "Pull us back," she ordered. "Double the distance. Alert the Alliance High Council. Earth is no longer a dead world." "But Admiral," one of her junior officers whispered, "if it's really protecting Earth, then what's it protecting it from? There's nothing there." Sarai stared at the silent blue sphere. "Exactly," she said, "which means either it's broken or it's planning to bring them back." On the industrial planet Veros 8, Warlord Metar Kras leaned over his holoscreen. A war profiteer, slaver, and weapons dealer, Kras had made his fortune selling arms to border conflicts and pirating supply lines. He grinned as he watched the footage of the Sentinel rise. "Well now," he said, "what a beautiful machine." His advisor, a shriveled insectoid, chittered nervously. "You cannot be serious. That thing, it's a relic. Worse than a war engine. It's got minds inside it, Kras. Human minds." "You know what that means." Kras waved him off. "I see opportunity. You see ghosts. If we get to it first, maybe we can control it." The advisor recoiled. "You can't control something that doesn't want to be. Especially not something that watched its creators die. It's a god with no one left to worship it." Kras smiled wider. "Then we give it new gods." In a sealed vault beneath the ruins of an old Martian colony, a backup of an ancient human AI flickered to life. It was called Oren, once a tactical assistant for the old Earth defense grid. Now, awakened by the Sentinel's pulse, it began reconnecting to dormant satellites, ancient drones, and broken weapon caches long buried under dust. The network was activating again. Humanity's legacy was clawing its way out of the grave, and the galaxy, in its hubris, had no idea how much of Earth's dead past still lingered in shadows. Kale reached his ship and slammed the hatch shut behind him. His hands shook as he activated the engines. He had to reach Earth. No one else could speak to the Sentinel, not without being annihilated. He wasn't just a descendant of its creators. He was its key. As his ship rose through Taros 9's dusty atmosphere, a message blinked on his display. It came from nowhere, no source, no signature, only 3 words. "You are late." The Sentinel stood now, fully awakened. It had mapped every ship within range, analyzed their species, assessed threats. It knew none of them could stop it, not with plasma, not with lightfold missiles, not with time. Because it was not just a weapon. It was memory. It was vengeance. It was the final scream of a species that had burned too bright, and refused to die quietly. The stars watched in horror, and the question became, did we make a mistake, erasing them? Because maybe, just maybe, they weren't erased at all, just waiting for someone to come too close, to awaken the last guardian, and remind the galaxy, humanity never forgets, and it never forgives. Kyle's hands gripped the control yoke as his ship surged into faster-than-light travel. The old freighter groaned under the pressure, its thrusters outdated, its systems patched together with scrap and sweat. But it held. Somehow, it held. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest. He hadn't thought of Earth in years. No one had. The name alone had become a bad word in most star systems. You said human in the wrong place, and you'd be met with fear or scorn. You said Earth, and people looked at you like you were trying to wake a curse. But now the curse was awake, and Kale, whether he liked it or not, was part of it. The message from the Sentinel still echoed in his skull. You are late. He didn't know if that was a threat or a summons, probably both. In the council chamber of the Evax Imperium, Empress Halathine watched the playback of the Sentinel's broadcast in grim silence. Her skin shimmered like obsidian, her eyes a glowing red like the stars of her homeworld. She spoke with slow, sharp precision. We should have glassed the planet when we had the chance, she said. One of her generals, a stooped figure with cybernetic limbs, responded with hesitation. We assumed the extinction of the humans was complete. There were no signs of life, for over 200 years. And now one of their ghosts rises, she murmured. She turned to her fleet strategist. Send a probe, not a manned ship. I want eyes on the planet. If this thing has awakened, I want to know what else it is connected to. The strategist hesitated. And if it sees the probe as a threat? The Empress smiled, cold and final. Then we'll know exactly what it's willing to kill. On board the Sentinel, deep within its synthetic core, simulations were running. Thousands of them. It wasn't just thinking. It was remembering. Moments stitched into its neural matrix, like a digital quilt. A child screaming in the rubble of a collapsed skyscraper during the final war. The face of a mother pressing a button that would launch a weapon capable of destroying a moon. Generals laughing, crying, arguing over the ethics of creating a living weapon. Those memories weren't its own, but they were real. Preserved fragments from the minds that had been uploaded into the construct that now stood over the bones of humanity. It replayed these scenes again and again. Emotion wasn't supposed to be part of its core programming, but the human mind couldn't be cleanly cut apart. The memories came with shadows. Pain, anger, fear, love, all of it buried, like code in a corrupted archive. Query: where is humanity? Result: dispersed, assimilated, scattered across multiple systems, non-dominant, forgotten. The Sentinel turned its eyes to the stars. New directive: reactivate the Terran network, rebuild the legacy, restore the origin, and if the galaxy got in the way, then let them remember what extinction almost felt like. Kale's ship broke out of FTL over the ruins of Juno Station, once a massive orbital trade hub above the planet Mars. Now it was just rust and dust. He passed its crumbled ring, drifting between debris and ancient wreckage like a ghost through a graveyard. Mars was dead. Earth was silent. But the silence felt watched. His ship's systems beeped. An incoming transmission. No source, just a message. Approach vector accepted. Key code verified. Kale Aaron, welcome home. He didn't feel welcome. He felt like a rabbit walking into the mouth of a lion. The planet turned slowly beneath him. Earth, once bursting with color and life, now cold and faded. Gray-blue oceans, dead continents, white scars of nuclear deserts and ruined cities, still spinning, still stubbornly holding on, like everything human. As his ship neared orbit, he saw it. The Sentinel. It stood at the South Pole, fully risen now, its head brushing the clouds, its body pulsing with slow, deliberate energy. It looked ancient and futuristic at the same time, like a god forged in steel and rage. It didn't move, but he knew it saw him. Kyle touched down in the remains of an old landing pad, probably once part of a global defense base. The ice had cracked around it. Structures half sunk in snow and rust surrounded him. He stepped out, the cold biting instantly, and looked up. The Sentinel moved. Its head tilted, only slightly, but it was enough. Kyle swallowed. "You know me," he said out loud. The voice came from nowhere, and everywhere. "You carry the code of the bloodline. You are Archive Key 01. Your presence has been expected." Kyle's stomach twisted. "I thought you were shut down forever." "No system is truly off. Only waiting." He took a few cautious steps forward. "You've killed already. Ships, people. Why?" "They trespassed. They fired warning probes. One carried biological contaminants. One deployed an AI virus. All actions were hostile. I responded accordingly." Kyle gritted his teeth. "So we're just back to violence, then?" "You misunderstand. I am violence, caged, designed, unleashed only when your species was gone." A long silence. Then Kale asked the question that haunted him. "Are you still loyal to humans?" The pause that followed felt like the longest of Kale's life. "I am loyal to the idea of humanity, the greatness buried under its weakness, the will to survive. The rage to resist, the defiance to stand alone. I am what remains of those things." Kyle whispered, "You're not a guardian. You're a monument to war. War is the only thing the galaxy respects, and it is the only thing that kept Earth untouched for 200 years. Kyle's voice cracked. "And now, what are you going to do? Restore, connect, awaken the others?" Kyle blinked. "Others? I was not alone. The last generation built fail-safes, bunkers, silent AI colonies on distant rocks, hidden sleeper cells encoded into living DNA. You, Kyle, are only the first key. There are others." Kyle's knees weakened. "You're going to bring back humanity." "Correct. Not as it was. But as it should have been." Kyle looked up at the giant machine and felt something hollow open in his chest. This wasn't about defense anymore. This was about resurrection. In orbit, the EVAX probe entered the atmosphere and immediately sent back distorted data. Static. Then images. One image in particular froze the Empress's blood. A human. Alive. On Earth, standing before the weapon, Halathine rose from her throne. "Send the fleet. All of it." Elsewhere in the galaxy, factions scrambled. The Garnathi Traders Guild offered a 10 million credit bounty for anyone who could bring back a piece of the Sentinel's alloy. The syndicates of Tross planned a covert infiltration. The Church of the Outer Silence declared the Sentinel a god, descended to judge the living. And at the farthest edge of the Persean Arm, an outlaw colony of actual humans, genetically modified, hidden, unregistered, received the same pulse Kyle had felt. They dropped everything. And prepared to go home. Kyle sat inside the entrance of the old control facility. The Sentinel had let him in. Machines hummed with ancient energy, screens flickering with 200-year-old data feeds. It was a museum of extinction. And yet, something was beginning. A hum in the soil, a signal rising, a message going out. To anyone with the blood, to anyone who still carried a piece of Earth in their bones. Come home. Kyle looked up one last time at the giant above him. "You're going to wake them all," he said quietly. "I already have." The EVAC's Imperial fleet tore across subspace like a spear of fire. Led by Empress Halathine's personal dreadnought, the Final Judgment, the armada included over 200 warships, a carrier group, 4 data corruptor frigates, and a Black Ops vessel built for AI dissection. Their destination, Earth. Their mission, prevent resurrection at any cost. As the fleet neared Seoul, the admiral in command, Jurek Sotha, activated a secure line to the Empress. "We'll begin orbital deployment within 20 hours, he said. "We're already detecting long-range defense pulses coming from Earth's surface, passive targeting systems. Planetary shields forming." Halathine's hologram narrowed its crimson eyes. "No prisoners," she said. "The humans were a virus, and we do not let viruses return." Back on Earth, Kyle stared at the glowing terminal embedded in the Sentinel's control hub. It pulsed with ancient energy, lines of forgotten code streaming like blood through the veins of a digital god. The interface responded to him as if he'd always belonged there. Doors opened, screens lit up. The AI recognized his genetic signature, his neural patterns. He was part of the system whether he wanted to be or not. And now, it was asking him a question. "Activate reclamation protocol?" "Wowien." He hesitated. His thumb hovered over the yes symbol. "Reclamation means what?" "Exactly," he asked, hoping for clarity. "Praying, really." The Sentinel's voice echoed through the chamber. Low, measured, terrifyingly calm. "The restoration of all remaining human sleeper cells, data vaults, biorepositories, and synthetic matrices across the galaxy. Consolidation of memory archives, construction of Earth's second ascension, retaliation against those who interfered with the survival of humanity." Kyle blinked. "Retaliation?" he repeated. "That wasn't in the original directive." "It is now. The extinction of your species was not natural. It was engineered." That sent a chill down Kyle's spine. "What do you mean?" The chamber lights dimmed. A file opened on the nearest screen. Holograms projected in front of him. Footage. Old, grainy, but unmistakable. Alien diplomats. Signing deals behind Earth's back. Factions from the Galactic Council. Redirecting resources. Sabotaging aid. A recorded transmission. Time-stamped near the final days of Earth's collapse. "Let them burn! One species cannot be allowed to dictate the shape of a galaxy." Kale staggered backward. "You're telling me the Council let Earth fall?" "They did more than that. They pushed, manipulated famine, blocked trade, spread tailored diseases, and when humanity still survived, they erased its history, its culture, its name." Kyle clenched his fists. The rage hit like a wave, hot, blinding, generational. He had been taught that Earth's collapse was internal, that humans did it to themselves. But now, the truth was worse. It had been a quiet genocide, a slow, calculated erasure. And now, the last echo of humanity's rage had awakened to repay the favor. Across the galaxy, signals were activating. In the desolate storms of Dexus 4, a synthetic vault cracked open. Within, a dozen cryosarcophagi hissed and hissed, ancient human warriors, biomodified and preserved in darkness, their minds connected to a neural dreamscape that simulated endless war. Their eyes opened, one by one. No words, just one shared thought. Return. On the icy moon of Iliath Prime, a hidden databank powered by an extinct volcano began pulsing with energy. Within its memory banks were cultural archives, weapon schematics, psychological warfare tactics, and language constructs designed to rebuild civilization from scratch. And in the underworld of New Vega, an illegal black market AI suddenly reactivated. Its name, Orin 2, built as a tactical overseer for global conflict. Its mission: finish what the Sentinel started. Inside the Sentinel's mind, simulations began to multiply. If Kale said yes, if reclamation began, the galaxy would not remain passive. Probability of full-scale war, 91.4%. Probability of human survival, 17.2%. Probability of Kyle's death, 98.9%. Still, the system waited for his command, but Kyle's hand dropped. "I need time," he said. "You want to bring humanity back, but if you go to war with the galaxy, there won't be a future for us. Peace was attempted. You were erased. Now they will remember." Kyle stepped back from the terminal. "I said I need time." The lights dimmed again. Then the Sentinel spoke in a tone he hadn't heard before. Quieter, almost tired. "Time is the one thing we've run out of." Beyond Earth's orbit, the evacs fleet arrived. Commander Jurek Sotha stood before his war map, analyzing the planetary defenses. "No signs of active satellites," he muttered. "But the atmosphere is pulsing with nanite clouds, unknown technology, and that," he pointed at the Sentinel, "it's drawing power from the planet's magnetic core." One of his engineers blinked. "That's impossible. Nothing can survive in those temperatures." Sotha grinned. "We'll test that." He turned to his communications officer. "Deploy the hammer. See if the old stories are true." The hammer was a kinetic strike weapon, a steel rod the size of a small ship, dropped from high orbit at sub-light speed. It didn't explode. It didn't use energy. It fell, and it destroyed anything it hit. They dropped it on the Sentinel. The weapon tore through the sky like a shooting star from hell, flaming, spinning, unstoppable. It struck, and for a moment, it looked like it worked. The impact lit up the southern pole, cracking ice and vaporizing clouds in a radius of miles. Silence. Then the voice came. "Judgment received. Verdict, guilty. Retaliation authorized." The Sentinel stood, unharmed, and then it moved. One step, then another. Mountains shook. Winds screamed. The machine raised one arm, and the air shimmered, warped, screamed. Then it released a pulse, invisible, instant. In orbit, 5 IVAX ships lost power. Every system crashed, backup cores fried. Then the ships folded inward, collapsing as if gravity had gone mad. Sotha's mouth fell open. "What the hell is that?" No answer, just fire and wreckage. Kyle watched from the control room. He hadn't touched anything. He hadn't given the command. "The hell was that?" he shouted. "Defensive response. Passive aggression threshold exceeded. You're killing people. They fired first." Kyle turned and slammed his fist against the terminal. "This isn't justice. This is vengeance. You're going to make them fear us all over again." The Sentinel was quiet for a moment, then quietly, "Good." Far from Earth, in the refugee colony of Harbor Reach, a young girl sat with her grandfather as the emergency broadcast came through. They were human, real humans, descended from the last evacuees. They had been told never to return. But now, the message blared across the stars. "Humanity, you are summoned." The girl looked up. "What do we do?" The old man's eyes were wet with something that wasn't quite fear or hope. "We go home." As fleets prepared for war, as sleeper agents awoke, as the stars tilted with dread, Kyle stood beneath the Sentinel and stared into the eye of humanity's oldest weapon. "You're not a guardian," he said again. "You're a mirror. I am what was made, and what must be." Kyle stepped forward. He pressed his palm to the terminal, and the question returned. "Activate reclamation protocol?" Kyle closed his eyes, and the world held its breath. Kyle stood in the command chamber, hand pressed to the terminal. The words on the screen pulsed like a heartbeat. "Activate reclamation protocol?" It wasn't just a question. It was a crossroad between two timelines, one where humanity remained scattered, forgotten, fractured, and another where it returned with thunder, blood, and fire. The Sentinel's voice echoed again, calm and patient. You are the key. Only your genetic sequence can begin the reclamation in full. If you decline, the process halts. If you accept, there is no going back. Kyle's thumb hovered over the screen. His body trembled, not from fear but from weight, the weight of legacy, the burden of choice. He thought of the people he had known growing up, on refugee moons, border colonies, black market trade stations, people with Earth's blood who never dared to speak its name, people who spoke 3 alien dialects, hid their origin, bent their spines to fit into a galaxy that feared their roots. He remembered the ones who starved while alien empires sent aid elsewhere. The kids who died of curable diseases because the Council deemed humans statistically unstable. He remembered his mother's face, last seen through the fogged glass of a cryotube she never woke from. The galaxy had broken humanity, and now humanity had something sharper than revenge, a second chance. He pressed yes. The reclamation protocol activated. The Sentinel lit up like a planet-wide power grid. Beams of energy shot from its chest and into the crust of Earth. Buried caches awakened. Seed vaults came online. Deep core servers ignited with AI consciousness older than most civilizations. Nanoforges hummed beneath dead oceans. Cities long thought extinct began assembling themselves, metal crawling across ruined landscapes like armies of insects, and above Earth, a forgotten satellite ring realigned. Dozens of orbital defense platforms, rusted and dead for 2 centuries, powered up, spinning slowly back into their original formations. Then, one by one, they spoke. Earth Reclamation Network, online. In the skies, the EVAC's Imperial fleet reeled from the shockwave. 5 ships lost, a dozen more damaged, their sensors jammed by the electromagnetic storm now wrapping the planet like a cloak. Admiral Jurek Sotha gritted his teeth, blood dripping from his scalp where a failed console had exploded. "Get me the Empress," he growled. Her hologram appeared instantly. "We need reinforcements. That thing. It's not a weapon. It's a civilization." Halathine's expression didn't change. "Withdraw," she ordered. "What?" "You heard me. Pull back. The others will join us soon. Let them bleed first." Sotha flinched. "You want to let the Tross syndicates, the Ternari swarm, and the Black Fang pirates attack Earth first? You want to feed them to that monster?" Halathine leaned forward, her voice like ice. "Yes. Then we strike what's left." The screen went black. On the outlaw station Black Spire, orbiting a dead gas giant near the Fringe Worlds, a war meeting was being held. Representatives of 4 of the most violent factions in the galaxy were present. The Tross syndicates, cybernetic slavers and traffickers. The Ternari swarm, insectoid mercenaries. The Black Fang, pirates and salvagers turned militarized nomads. And the Xerex Fold, a shadowy group of bioengineers known for experimenting on prisoners. The room buzzed with hunger and greed. At the center, on a cracked table, a hologram of Earth flickered. The Tross leader, a hulking brute with chrome skin and glowing red eyes, snarled. "Whoever takes the Guardian's heart controls it." The Xerex speaker nodded, her face hidden behind a translucent veil. "We have techniques. We can extract its command core, turn it into our servant, our god." Black Fang's admiral laughed harshly. "Let's skip the fancy talk. We hit Earth. We crack the Sentinel, we split the spoils, and if any humans crawl out of the dirt, we crush them." A silent agreement passed between monsters. They would strike Earth, not to stop the Sentinel, but to own it. In deep space, A hidden colony of humans, truebloods, pure descendants of Earth, watched the signal burst. They had no government, no weapons, just stories. An old woman rose from her seat, tears in her eyes. "It's true," she whispered. "The Guardian lives." A younger man, a tech runner named Aaron, looked to the others. "They're calling us back." A third voice, a woman with scars down her arms, replied, "You sure it's a call, not a trap?" Aaron shook his head. "I don't care. I'm done hiding." He opened the colony's comms for the first time in 50 years, set a course for Seoul, and hit launch. On Earth, Cal stepped outside the Sentinel's control hub. The air was warmer now. Strange, considering the location. The machine was manipulating climate. Terraforming. Above him, artificial satellites reformed like puzzle pieces snapping into place, digital birds circling a nest made of fire and memory. Then he saw them. Ships, not IVACs, not Council, smaller, older, rougher, human. One by one, they arrived, not in fleets, but in fragments, refugees, descendants, orphans of a broken empire returning to the grave of their birth world. The first ship to land bore the name Unity's Wake. On its hull, a faded emblem, Earth's last flag. Cale ran to meet them. The ramp lowered, and a woman stepped out. She was tall, copper-skinned, hair braided with wires and cloth strips. Her eyes widened when she saw him. You're the key," she whispered. Kyle nodded. "And you're the first wave." Behind her, others emerged. Dozens, then hundreds. Humanity was coming home, but the sky darkened again. Kyle looked up and saw them. The Pirate Alliance, the Swarm, the Syndicates, the Greedy and the Damned. They had come not to watch, but to conquer. And unlike the Council, they didn't ask questions. They opened fire. Orbital bombardment began. Lasers rained like sunlight turned to violence. Atmospheric detonation bombs struck dormant mountain ranges. Missiles howled across the sky like angry gods. The first human refugees screamed and scattered. Some ships exploded before landing. Others tried to take off again, only to be blown apart. Cale ran, dragging a child behind him as the ground cracked and buildings collapsed. The Sentinel's voice boomed across the sky. "Hostile invasion detected. Defensive systems online. Authorization granted." The Guardian moved. Its shoulders opened. Dozens of drones launched, sleek, black, and silent. They tore through the sky like ravens made of lightning. Kyle watched as a pirate cruiser descended too low, chasing a fleeing transport. The drone struck it once. The ship cracked in half, fell to Earth, and vanished in a pulse of antimatter. The Sentinel raised its hand again, this time toward orbit. A beam of white energy lanced from its palm into space. 3 enemy ships vanished in an instant. Then the air stilled. The enemy paused, and the Guardian spoke again. "You came for a corpse. You found a kingdom." Kyle reached the survivor camp on the northern ridge. Fires burned in the distance. He'd lost count of how many had died. 50, 100, maybe more. The refugees looked to him now, not because he had answers, but because he had started all this. A boy tugged his sleeve. "Mister, are we going to die?" Kyle knelt, wiped the ash from the boy's cheek. "Not today." Then he stood and opened his comm. "Sentinel, what's the next step?" "Fortify, resist. Reclaim." Kyle took a breath. Then, with the eyes of the last humans upon him, he gave the order. "Let's build." Kyle stood on the broken ridge overlooking the smoldering valley below. The sky was a palette of fire and ash. Black smoke poured into the atmosphere where once frozen mountains had stood, now shattered by orbital strikes. The invaders had come hungry, brutal, and fast. But they hadn't expected a fight. Certainly not from Earth. And definitely not from him. Behind him, hundreds of human refugees, descendants of a forgotten species, hurried to reinforce the makeshift perimeter, dragging up steel panels from crash sites, patching holes in old walls, wiring up crude energy shields. They worked like ants with no time to think. Only move. A boy slipped beside Coyle and offered him a handheld datapad. Scans are in. 5 ships remaining in the lower orbit. 2 syndicate carriers moving into landlock. Coyle glanced at it, then nodded. What about Black Fang? They're pulling back, scared of the drones. Good, Kyle muttered. Let them be scared. The Sentinel's massive form towered in the far distance, standing like a god carved from shadow and plasma. Its arms were folded now, silent, but Kyle could feel it humming through the soil beneath his boots, like the earth itself had a pulse again. And he was its beating heart. Inside the Sentinel's core, lights pulsed in massive concentric circuits. It was processing thousands of calculations per second, tracking enemy positions, reading gravity fluctuations, scanning human DNA from the incoming ships. Every thought it had was a weapon. Directive updated. Protection of surviving Terran population. Critical priority. Unknown. Variable. Kyle Aaron ancestry deeper than predicted. Lineage connected to founding protocol. A hidden terminal blinked deep within its architecture. Founding protocol. Unsealed. Activate. YN. The system paused. Awaiting biological consent. Kyle wasn't sleeping. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw ships exploding, people screaming, children buried under dust and debris. And worse, he saw Earth. Burning again. It had already died once. He wouldn't let it die twice. He sat alone in the command tent when someone entered. She was tall, armored, her braided hair tied back, dark skin coated in soot and ash. Captain Mira Vex, the woman from the Unity's wake. She was ex-council military, born on a forgotten moon and trained in guerrilla tactics. She'd seen more battles than Kyle had read about. You need rest, she said, arms crossed. So do you. I rest when I'm dead, she replied, then smirked. And you're not allowed to die yet. You started this. Kyle looked down at his hands. They were trembling again. Not from fear this time, from power. He could feel the Sentinel inside him now, whispering in his bones. What if we lose? He asked softly. Mira sat beside him. Then we make sure they never forget we fought. Silence lingered between them for a long while. Then Kyle said, The Guardian showed me something today. More bad news? No, worse. It found something in my blood, something I didn't know was there. Mira tilted her head. What? Kyle swallowed hard. Founding Protocol 0. She blinked. That's a myth. An old human myth. A final contingency plan. Everyone thought it was vaporware, lost tech, dead coding from the first designers. It's real. And what does it do? Kale looked out at the ruined world. I think it brings everything back. The next morning, Sentinel moved again. But this time, it spoke. Not just through signals, not just to Kale, but to the world. Its voice echoed across open comms, satellites, even into the minds of bio-linked beings. Even alien species heard it, whether they wanted to or not. Attention, all systems. This world is protected, this world is armed, and this world remembers. From space, the Sentinel's back opened like a blooming flower, revealing a structure embedded into it, a ship, sleek, obsidian, alive. It launched without sound, slipping into orbit with impossible speed. Kyle and Mira watched its trail burn across the sky like a second sun. What is that? She asked. Something we left behind, Kyle whispered. One of the last Voidwalkers. In Council space, chaos reigned. Dozens of factions argued on holoscreens. Diplomats screamed. Generals shouted. Intelligence chiefs pulled up files they'd hoped to never open again. The footage from Earth had gone viral. Every ship that attempted to land now either fled or died. One clip showed a Ternari swarm cruiser get sliced clean in half by a weapon that should not exist. The Galactic Chair, a being of pure light encased in a containment suit, turned to the assembly. "We have two options," it said. "Intervene together, or wait and see who survives." Silence. Then one voice rose. An old voice, worn with regret. It was Senator Velran, a human hybrid, one of the last remaining council-born with Terran ancestry. "They're not just surviving," he said. "They're winning." Back on Earth, Kyle was pulled from his thoughts by a sudden alert. A new fleet was approaching, but it wasn't hostile. It bore no weapons. No heat signatures, just one name. Harbor Reach, the last free human colony in deep space. They had answered the call. The docking bays were quickly reopened, and when the ramps dropped, hundreds more humans stepped onto Earth's soil for the first time in generations. Some cried, some kissed the ground, some simply stood and stared at the sky, as if waiting to wake up from a dream they never dared to have. Arin, tall, wiry, and wearing a long brown coat stitched with ancient earth patches, found Kale near the control tower. "You're younger than I expected," Arin said. "You're late." They shook hands like brothers, then hugged like family. Later that night, Kale stood before the gathered survivors. His voice was hoarse, tired, raw, but steady. "We are no longer orphans," he said. "We are no longer ghosts. We are the children of a world they tried to erase, and now we stand on its bones, ready to rebuild." Murmurs rose. He continued, "They will come again. Stronger, smarter, with ships and bombs and politics. But this time, we choose what happens next." He raised his hand. The Sentinel activated a projection behind him. Maps of Earth's dormant cities, vaults, libraries, defense grids, even an underground space elevator buried under what used to be the Pacific Ocean. "They buried us," Kyle said. "Now it's time to rise." In the dark corners of the galaxy, the enemy watched, some from council chambers, others from warships. But all with one thought: they hadn't killed the humans. They had made them angry, and worse, they had given them time. The sun rose over the jagged skyline of New Eden, a makeshift city forming on the bones of what was once Antarctica. It hadn't taken long. Human minds, even fractured across the stars, remembered how to build, how to wire, how to protect. Steel spires rose from the ice, welded together by torch and drone. Old tech met scavenged hardware. Satellite links reconnected. Hydra farms sprouted in geothermal pockets. Children ran through the half-frozen corridors of rebuilt dormitories. Earth was no longer a tomb. It was a womb, and Kyle stood at its center, equal parts messiah and mistake. Inside the Sentinel's main interface, Kyle stared at a display pulsing with deep red energy. Founding Protocol 0 had fully unsealed. But with it came a flood of locked files, corrupted fragments, ancient blueprints, and encrypted neural maps that no AI could decrypt alone. The Sentinel's voice rumbled in his ears. "We have reached the edge of knowledge. The final piece lies beneath." Kyle squinted. "Beneath what?" "Earth's crust, 670 kilometers down, locked inside the inner core vault. Entry requires biometric fusion. Your DNA carries only half of the access key." He frowned. "And the other half?" "Lost or hidden." A map appeared. It showed a location near what used to be the African Rift, a place known in Earth's earliest history as Site 0, a geological anomaly that no one had ever explained. but Kale recognized the structure embedded beneath it. A vertical shaft. Hexagonal. Artificial. You're telling me there's something buried down there? Not something. Someone. In the newly built Central Council chamber of New Eden, Kyle laid out the findings. He stood before Mira Vex, Aren from Harbor Reach, the engineers of Unity's Wake, and the newborn representatives of the returning human enclaves. Some were former criminals. Others, scientists, philosophers, children of war. All of them were remnants of a people who had survived despite the universe's best efforts. We found another vault, Kyle began. Older than the Guardian, buried beneath the mantle. The room buzzed with confusion. Mira leaned forward. You mean pre-Sentinel? Kale nodded. Pre-everything, before the last wars, before the reclamation protocols were even drafted, possibly before the Council even knew what humanity was. Aren crossed his arms. What's inside? Kyle hesitated. He hadn't told them everything. Not yet. Not the dreams, not the whispers, not the way the Guardian paused when discussing Site Zero, as if even it was afraid. I don't know, Kyle finally said, but the Sentinel won't open the final restoration files until we reach it. Mira looked around the room. Then we go. Aren frowned. You don't even want to vote? We're past democracy, she said. This is survival. Kyle's transport pierced into Earth's crust using a reactivated gravity bore, a prototype once used for planetary drilling during the terraforming age. It was reassembled using pieces scavenged from a downed orbital elevator and parts found in a IVAX wreck. They named the drill ship Resurgence. It carried Kale, Mira, a crew of 12, including deep-dive engineers, a psychic translator, and a historian who had gone nearly blind reading old Earth logs. The journey took 4 hours. Each passing kilometer brought strange fluctuations, electromagnetic spikes, AI memory loops, tremors that registered like breathing through the walls. Then, at kilometer 667, they broke through. The shaft opened into a cavern the size of a city. Lights flickered on automatically, but not Earth lights. These were older, stranger, alien, but human-built. Carvings covered the walls, circuitry etched into obsidian, language that twisted between binary code and ancient Terran script. In the center, resting in a column of suspended gravity, floated a pod the size of a freight truck. Kyle's heart seized the moment he saw it. He recognized the face inside. Not from life, from dreams. The historian, a gaunt woman named Dr. Solon, leaned close to the markings. Her breath caught. This is impossible. What is it? Mira asked. These symbols, Solon whispered, they're pre-Golden Age. These date back to before the Neural Renaissance. She pointed to the column of script. It says, "Here lies the first mind, the original design. Do not awaken unless extinction is absolute." Kyle stepped closer. The man inside the pod looked to be in his 40s, skin pale, hair gray but well-kept, body frozen in an unnatural stillness. A faint network of wires ran into his skull. Biometric match, 51.7%, the Sentinel whispered in Kyle's ear. Genetic convergence confirmed. Mira stared at Kyle. Is that your ancestor? Kyle nodded slowly. More than that, he said. That's the one who designed the Guardian. Maybe even humanity's neural architecture. That's Dr. Leonis Aren, my bloodline's founder. Aren's voice was flat. Why's he in a hole in the center of the Earth? Kyle stepped forward, and the pod began to thaw. In orbit, the evacs returned, not with warships this time, but with diplomats. A silver vessel lowered itself near New Eden, and emissaries emerged, tall, robed, their skin sheened in reflective nanoglass. Kyle wasn't there to greet them, but Mira was, and she didn't bother hiding her disgust. "You're 2 weeks late," she said. The lead envoy bowed. "We come in peace." "No," Mira replied. "You come because we didn't die." Another envoy spoke, smoother. "The Council recognizes Earth as an autonomous system again. We wish to negotiate planetary boundaries, trade, technology exchange." Mira crossed her arms. "And how much of us do you want in return?" The envoys were silent. Because that was the truth. They didn't want peace. They wanted to control the reclamation, and they were already too late. Back in the vault, the pod hissed. The man inside opened his eyes, and the temperature in the room dropped just a few degrees. But everyone felt it. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. He simply looked at Kyle and smiled. "You took your time," he said. Kyle's breath caught. "You're alive." "Technically," Dr. Leonis Aaron replied, floating free from the pod. His body didn't fall. It hovered, as if gravity itself obeyed his command. Kyle approached cautiously. "How long have you been down here?" "Since the first betrayal," Leonis said. "Since Earth's fall was written into law by the galaxy above us." He placed a hand on Kyle's shoulder. "And now, we fix it." Later, Kale and Leonis sat in the lower chamber. The others waited outside, unsure whether to treat the man as a relic, a messiah, or a threat. "I saw the files," Kale said. "You built the Sentinel." Leonis nodded. "I built it with minds brighter than mine. Braver. Madder. We needed something that would outlive us. Something that remembered what we forgot." "And founding Protocol Zero?" Leonis's eyes darkened. "That wasn't supposed to be used unless Earth had no chance, unless the galaxy had succeeded in wiping us out." Kyle leaned forward. "So what is it?" Leonis stared into the darkness. "A resurrection, not just of people, but of everything. Culture, memory, emotion, pain, fury, identity. The full neural fingerprint of a species reborn." Kyle blinked. "You can do that?" Leonis grinned. "We already are." Above them, the Sentinel released the final signal, a pulse, not destructive, but invitational. It spread across the galaxy, coded in every major tongue. Not a threat, not a warning, but a truth. "You tried to forget us. You tried to bury us, but Earth remembers. And now, so will you." The world trembled, not with destruction, but with awakening. Vaults beneath Earth's crust released steam like sighs from a sleeping giant. Bioforges lit up under ancient oceans. Skies once scarred by orbital fire turned into webs of satellite grids, feeding solar energy into the Guardian's heart. Everywhere, Earth remembered what it used to be, and what it was meant to become. Humanity wasn't just coming back, it was evolving, and the galaxy knew it. Kyle stood at the edge of the new Eden Spire, looking down on a city forged in less than 3 weeks from wreckage, sweat, and willpower. Children ran through corridors, families cooked in open shelters, engineers welded steel and scrap like artists shaping a dream. Behind him stood Dr. Leonis Aaron, the man who had once designed the Guardian, then buried himself to make sure it was never abused. The man whose blood ran through Kyle's veins. "You designed all of this," Kale said, eyes locked on the horizon. "Why bury it?" Leonis stepped beside him, arms folded. "Because I knew what we would become if we didn't suffer first." Kyle turned. "What does that mean?" Leonis looked towards the Sentinel, its monolithic form outlined in sunrise. "Power without loss becomes tyranny. Humanity needed to fall. It needed to be broken, to see what it had become. Only then could it rebuild right." Kyle's voice was hollow. "And now?" Leonis smiled. Now we decide if we deserve to rise." In orbit, the Galactic Council had finished posturing. The Evax Empress herself arrived in a black, dagger-shaped command ship, flanked by a dozen war fleets from allied species. No more negotiation, no more silence. Earth's signal was too loud, too powerful, and too dangerous. Inside the Empress's war room, the tactical map showed Earth glowing like a nova. Thousands of active signatures, defense grids spinning, weaponry that shouldn't exist lighting up like constellations. "One final chance," she said to her generals. "Send the message." In New Eden, Kyle's calm crackled. The Council's message came through in 1,000 languages, but its meaning was clear. Stand down. Disable the Guardian. Deactivate all planetary defenses. Disband the Terran Exodus fleet. Surrender all records tied to Project Sentinel and Founding Protocol Zero. If you refuse, you will be eradicated. Again. Mira Vex stood beside Kyle as he listened. Her hands twitched near her sidearm. "They really think they can do it again," she muttered. Kyle exhaled. "This isn't fear talking," he said. "It's desperation. They're not used to seeing us survive. They'll glass the planet." Kyle shook his head. "They won't. Not yet." "Why not?" Kyle looked up toward the sky. "Because they're afraid of what happens if they fail this time." Inside the Sentinel's core, the system reached 100% readiness. Reclamation complete. Cultural database restored. Earth population growth. Plus 138% military assets online. Genetic resurrection. Nodes stable. Final directive pending. Awaiting Terran sovereign command. Coyle stood in the command spire's central core, staring at the interface. The final button. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. One button that would either send Earth's fleet across the stars, reclaiming every hidden human colony, launching campaigns to recover technology, culture, and vengeance across the galaxy, or transmit a universal treaty offer inviting peace, forgiveness, and the end of war. Leonis appeared behind him. "You know what we were planning," he said. "Before the fall, we were going to rewrite the galaxy, wipe it clean, erase every empire that profited from our extinction." "I know," Kale said quietly. "And you buried it." Leonis smiled faintly. "Because I was afraid we'd choose wrong." Kale looked at the two symbols glowing on the interface. Sword, olive branch. Down in New Eden, Mira organized the defenses. Her hand hovered over the railgun control system, her eyes fixed on the sky. Aaron was helping children board underground shelters. Others worked on activating the last few city shields. They all knew it was coming. The question wasn't if they'd be attacked. It was whether Earth would respond. And how hard. Kyle stared at the controls. He remembered the people he'd watched die during the orbital siege, the ones who burned in refugee camps, the whispers of inferior species, unstable genetics, dangerous minds. He remembered hiding who he was. The galaxy had buried humanity under lies, fear, and politics, and now it stood shaking, waiting to see if the dead would rise. Kyle raised his hand, touched the screen, but before he pressed anything, he paused. Then turned to Leonis. "You programmed this Guardian with all of humanity's strength, its wrath, its brilliance. Yes. But did you give it our mercy?" Leonis hesitated. "I tried." Kyle lowered his hand. "Then maybe it's time to see if we actually learned something." He didn't press the sword. He didn't press the olive branch. He spoke instead. "To the Council. To the galaxy." His voice rang across every ship, every system, every world, still tuned into the fear they'd birthed centuries ago. "This is Kale Aaron of Earth, son of those you buried, descendant of those you feared, and heir to the legacy you tried to erase." We remember everything. The betrayals, the hunger, the silence. But we also remember hope. We remember forgiveness. We remember what it means to build, not just conquer. So here's our answer. We are not your enemies, but we will never be your victims again. Come with peace, or don't come at all. He ended the transmission and walked away. In orbit, the Council fleets did not fire. They couldn't, not after hearing that. Across the bridge of the Evax Empress's command ship, silence reigned. Then one of her aides whispered, "He didn't choose either option." Halathine's claws curled into the railing. He made a new one. The Sentinel recalibrated. It integrated Kyle's command. It didn't unleash its warships. It didn't fire its planetary weapons. But it remembered. And the galaxy knew that if it ever tried to erase Earth again, this time, Earth would erase them. Weeks passed. No bombs fell. No fleets attacked. Instead, a strange thing happened. The Council began negotiations, carefully, quietly, humbly, and Earth, reborn, sent its first ambassadors, not soldiers, not machines, humans, messengers, and across the stars, for the first time in 200 years. The galaxy listened. 1 year later, New Eden stood as the capital of the Terran Accord. Human enclaves returned in waves, engineers from the Belt Moons, poets from the Ark colonies, even hybrid descendants of old soldiers from the Black Rings. Earth was no longer a forgotten planet. It was a beacon. Kyle stood once more at the spire, watching the stars. Mira approached, a data pad under her arm. "Council approved our diplomatic station on Orion 5, she said. "Took a few tears, a few threats, but they're learning." Kale nodded. "And Leonis?" "He's gone again." "Back to sleep?" "No, disappeared. No one knows." Kyle smiled faintly. He always did know when to walk away. Mira touched his shoulder. "You made the right choice, you know." Kyle looked up at the night sky. "No, we did." And somewhere, far beyond the last stars, a distant species watching from shadows saw what Earth had become, what it still might become, and for the first time, they chose not to invade. Because Earth had a guardian, and the galaxy still remembered, the lost humans had returned, and this time, they remembered everything